The impact of religion and Sufism on arts in Sudan. Ibrahim Al-Salahi, 1930. Our journey continues in this documentary series, through which we explore the impact of Islam and Sufism on Sudanese artistic experience. We open windows of reflection and worlds of creativity where aesthetic sensibility merges with spiritual devotion. In today's episode, we meet one of the most prominent figures in Sudanese and global visual art, the distinguished artist Ibrahim Al-Salahi, who has forged a unique path that harmonizes authenticity with innovation, a local with the universal. In this encounter, we draw closer to glimpses of his life, exploring how his artistic vision was shaped through a profound engagement with Sudanese, African, Arab, and Islamic heritage. His works have become contemplative spaces, rich with symbolism, resonant with memory, and expressive of a Sufi dimension, understood as an existential experience that transcends form to reach the essence of meaning. We accompany you on this journey, dear audience, which goes beyond recounting a biography to offering a thoughtful reading of a Salahi artistic experience and to reflecting on his global contributions that have established him as a unique voice in the history of modern art. And for this, welcome again, dear audience, and we are delighted to have you with us in this episode, which we hope will serve as a new window into the aesthetics and spirituality of art. So the audience, as you listen, this is our first encounter with the renowned Sudanese artist Ibrahim Al-Salahi. And as you listen, our encounter with him comes as a continuation for the series of documentaries that have been devoted to seek to trace the impact, the influence of Islamic religion and Sufism on the artistic productions of the Sudanese artist. So Ibrahim Al-Salahi is a leading figure of the Khartoum school. Relentless in his practice, he is a pioneer of the Sudanization of modern art practices. For more than 60 years, the Sudanese-born artist Ibrahim Al-Salahi has left or has been a prolific, innovative, and highly influential international voice the contemporary art discourse. His body of paintings and drawings describing a unique response to the problem of transitional modernism and its relationship to post-colonial cultural development. His biography informed that he was born in 1930 in Al-Abbasiyya neighborhood in Durman, within the venerable household of Sheikh Al-Salahi, his father, and in close proximity to the home of grandfather, the astronomer Al-Rayah Al-Aidarus. He grew up in an environment deeply infused with knowledge, literature, and Sufism. Above all, space animated by spirit and firmly rooted traditions. And about his earliest education, Al-Salahi learned to draw at a very young age, and inspired by the Khalwa practice of writing Quranic verses on tablets of acacia wood. A support that student often embellished with indigenous African ornament. Salahi's father, a religious teacher, encouraged his son's talent as a draftsman as well as his diligence as a Quranic scholar. From an early age, art making and drawing in particular was for Salahi tied to spirituality and the practice of Sufism. Now, in his early 90s, he still prays before beginning to paint or draw. Al-Salahi attended Gordon Memorial College in Sudan's capital Khartoum, where from 1949 to 1952 he received art instruction based on Western curriculum. After graduation, he won a scholarship to the Slade School of Fine Arts at University College London. Salahi spent 3 years as a London art student, imbibing the fundamentals of the state of modern art at that time, from Impressionism to Cubism and beyond, supplementing his studies with trips to museums like Tachi and the National Gallery, where he was exposed firsthand to the European art historical canon. He also spent time in the British Library studying limited Islamic manuscripts in particular, but when he returned to Khartoum in 1955, his oil paintings remained decidedly under the influence of European post-Impressionism. At this art school, Al-Salahi was exposed to European schooling, modern circles, and the works of artists that gradually influenced his art. Studying in London also allowed him to take formal and ideological cues from modernist painting, which helped him to achieve a balance between pure expression and gestural freedom. In 1962, he received a UNESCO scholarship to study in the United States, from where he visited South America. From 1964 to 1965, he returned to the US with the support of the Rockefeller Foundation, and in 1966, he led the Sudanese delegation during the first World Festival of Black Arts in Dakar, Senegal. In addition to representing Sudan in the World Festival of Black Arts, Salahi was part of the Sudanese delegation at the first Pan-African Cultural Festival in Algeria in 1969. Both of these events were important and significant in modern African art movements. Professional career. After the completion of his education, he returned to Sudan. During this period, he used Arabic calligraphy and other elements of Islamic culture that played a role in his everyday life, trying to connect to his heritage. Salahi began to fill his work with symbols and markings of small Arabic inscriptions, and he became more advanced with incorporating Arabic calligraphy into his work. The symbols began to produce animals, humans, and platforms, and plant forms, providing new meanings to his artwork. Salahi learned to combine European artistic styles with traditional Sudanese themes, which resulted in an African-influenced kind of surrealism. From 1969 until 1972, Al-Salahi was assistant cultural attaché at the Sudanese embassy in London. After that, he returned to Sudan as director of culture in Ja'far Nimeri's government, and then was undersecretary in the Ministry of Culture and Information until September 1975. His imprisonment. In 1975, he was imprisoned for 6 months and 8 days without trial for being accused of participating in an anti-government coup. At the time of Al-Salahi's period of incarceration, many intellectuals and some members of the Sudanese Communist Party were sent to prison. Salahi's freedom was stripped in Kobar prison in Khartoum. Prisoners were not allowed to write or draw, and if a prisoner was to be caught with a paper or pencil, he would be punished with solitary confinement for 15 days. Despite this, Salahi was able to find a pencil and often used the brown paper bags that food was distributed with to draw on. Salahi would tear the bag into numerous pieces and could use the 25 exercise minutes he received every day to sketch out ideas for huge paintings. He would also secretly sketch and bury small drawings into the sand to maintain his ideas. Al-Salahi recalled that the security director told him that had it not been for Bonamalwal, they would never have released you because he was supposed to be executed. Salahi was released on 16th of March 1976 and did not keep any of the drawings he made in prison. He left them all buried. He rented a house in the Banat region of Omdurman for a short period of time. 2 years after his release from the prison, he exiled himself from Sudan and for some years worked and lived in Doha, Qatar, before finally settling in Oxford, United Kingdom. Salahi was destined to leave Sudan again for several years, at once voluntarily yet reluctantly. Nevertheless, he remained connected to his homeland, which had a vivid effect on his artistic practice. The audience, I would like to reminding you that in our presence today, Ibrahim Al-Salahi. So Ibrahim Al-Salahi, as I have started my encounter with him, has been taken here as an example to prominent, outstanding, illustrious Sudanese artist known worldwide. So our encounter with him will continue, and then here we have the return to the Sudanese culture and heritage. Following his return from studying in the United Kingdom, he notes, I left Sudan and then came back. Suddenly I started looking around me and seeing things. The artistic units in the simple farmers, handmade student crafts, the colors on techniques they use, and suddenly I was touched and shocked by the beauty of these things. I had lived with these things my entire life, but I only saw them after I returned from my study abroad with fresh new eyes. Only then did I start traveling throughout Sudan, looking with my new eyes at everything the people made. The houses, beds, prayer mats, and even the saddles used for riding camels and bulls. I was so taken by the charm of what I saw that I did nothing but observe and paint. Salahi's goal has never been to create a language particular to contemporary Sudanese art. In fact, he is quoted by his friend, the Sudanese art historian Salah Hassan, as saying that there is not such a thing as Sudanese art. His aim, according to Hassan, is to create an art that is simultaneously local and international, historically based and deeply modern. He has achieved this objective by using the hybridity of the Sudanese culture, which blends Arabic and Islamic, Nubian, Coptic, and Western influences as his inspiration. Beginning in the 1960s, Al-Salahi paintings began to feature mask-like faces that refer to West African tribal art, with which he had become familiar through books and magazines, and subsequently a series of journeys to Nigeria, Uganda, Senegal, and other countries in the region. Juxtapose these African motifs with stripes, spirals, stippled dots, and geometric forms inspired by indigenous Sudanese decoration and decoration painted on domestic adobe architecture, on objects like musical instruments, and woven into fabrics. As his style developed, he added shapes derived from letters of the Arabic alphabet to his compositors, followed by calligraphically drawn words and phrases. Al-Salahi has repeatedly emphasized that all his work starts with a line, and this proved to be the uniting element between the abstract and the figurative, decorative, pattern, and narrative, word and image during the period when he was developing his nature artistic style. Above all, it is the calligraphic line that has dominated Salahi's work. Calligraphy is something you can really rest against.
In London in the 1940s, but when he returned to Sudan, his first exhibition was a total flop.
The mistake was mine, because I didn't do something to link up with them as such, and there was a gap between sort of European, Western kind of art expression and what they do at home.
Many of his drawings from then on featured gaunt figures reflecting a wild emptiness. Appointed as a government official in the 1970s, his tenure ended abruptly in 1975 in the aftermath of a failed coup. He was detained without trial, but his hand was not imprisoned, expressing himself in the way he knew best.
Now, it's work like this, depicting the political turmoil and the social changes taking place in the Sudan in the 1980s, that Ibrahim worked on.
This is one of his.
The exhibition curator believes Ibrahim's recent works represent a fusion and culmination of the artist's experiences to date.
There are some of them that are peaceful, some that reflect the turmoil of Sudan, some in which you can read what was happening at the time, but also some that reflect in the most introspective aspect of Ibrahim's life.
Ibrahim Al-Salahi shows a continued engagement with the modern art practices, and he believes the perception of African art should also change.
We've been neglected for many, many times, and particularly in comparison with Western art and so on. People always try to push it down to ethnicity, to the tribal aspect, the village art and so on, but they never see it as art in itself. For heaven's sake, either take us as artists or leave us alone.
Sophie Ikenye, BBC News.
He explained to an interviewer, "I took the calligraphy itself and took away the meaning from it. Then I had to break the forms of the letters themselves and try to see the bones of the letters. It then became the beginning of a new pictorial idiom. As the art historian Iftikhar Dadi noted in an essay on الصلحي and the calligraphic tradition, in the period between 1955 and 1975, many artists across Africa, the Middle East, and South Asia were developing calligraphic languages in their work. This trend was also evident among the painters of Khartoum. In the early 1960s, Salahi was one of small but significant number of Sudanese artists blending abstraction and Islamic calligraphy in their work, and critics began to take notes, calling Al-Salahi and his cohort the Khartoum School, though none of the painters included worked closely with one another or agreed to use the rubric to describe their projects. In his autobiography, A Handful of Dots, قبض التراب, published in 2012, Salahi recounts a pivotal moment after returning from his studies at the School of Fine Art in London. He experienced a profound shock when he found that audiences were largely indifferent to his work. He concluded that this was because his paintings did not reflect the visual heritage of Sudanese culture. This realization led him to engage deeply with local aesthetics values, incorporating Arabic calligraphy, Islamic symbols, and African motifs into his work, which also drawing on modern European artistic techniques. The first exposition of Al-Salahi's work did not find an audience in the art community of Khartoum, a failure that made him determined to create an artistic language that would incorporate what he had learned both in Europe and in the unique cultural milieu of Sudan, a country with strong traditions emanating from Arabic, Islamic, and African visual culture, as well as local decorative arts and crafts. Sudan had recently liberated itself from colonial rule. And in fact, this article has been written post-Sudan independence in 1956. And when Al-Salahi returned to art making after a period of study and travel within his country, he began to fashion a language that derived from all of these enormously rich sources and from the skills learned from a lifetime of reading and writing Quranic calligraphy. This ambitious and thoroughly contemporary quest to create a manner of art making that spoke to local, regional, and international communities has continued over more than half a century of producing paintings and drawings on this continent. And it has resulted in an aura that defines the notion of hybridity in a global context.
The color which I work for some years, burnt sienna, ochre, yellow ochres, whites and blacks. It's the color of the earth in the Sudan, which I cared a great deal about. And the idea of organic growth of a picture. In the Reborn Sound of Childhood Dreams #1, it was one piece. The one that took. That I did it when I was teaching the art college in Sudan. I remember we had a commission to make some paintings for the municipal council. And with a friend of mine, we had a large piece of cloth which we primed and worked on it in the studio where I used to teach. So we separated and we used a scissor where I cut and I got my part and I kept working on it. I was so excited about the idea, whatever came through my vision. And the thing is that I used, even with the oil paint, I used enamel paint, which was terrible. Enamel paint for a piece of cloth. To tell you the truth, when I'm working, I'm not at all aware of what is going to look like. I work, I feel that as if I am possessed by some other power within me, which is producing that work. And that's why all I can recognize is the nucleus. In the nucleus, yes, I can see it, that this is a germ of an idea. How it's going to grow into a larger size, I have no idea whatsoever. I just keep working. And by keeping working, the work develops by itself and shows me things possibly in my subconscious mind that I'm not at all aware of what it's all about. And that's why I prefer not to give it a name. Yes, sometimes it becomes so obvious that has got a name, and it tells me. You know, it's almost like children growing. You give them a name, then later on they change their name, or they give you another kind of image continuously. That's why I almost gave up after giving so many names. I said, never mind about the names. Let that be judged by the viewer. And the viewer, I think, has got a role to play. That when you look at the work, what the work means to you is for me, is far more important, because that is the message. What it means altogether is up to them, not to me. And otherwise, I'll be sort of more like dictating my thing, giving it a name to start with. I'm dictating what he should understand, or she understand. I leave it to them.
From this synthesis emerged what became known in the early 1960s as the Khartoum School, of which Al-Salahi is considered a leading founder and pioneer. Beyond popular acceptance, the Khartoum School also gained official recognition in Sudan, as the artist Hassan Moussa explains. Al-Salahi's project of establishing a Sudanese visual art aligned with the state cultural agenda, contributing to national unity. By the early 1970s, Al-Salahi had effectively become a national icon, with his image appearing on tourism posters as a symbol of Sudanese cultural identity. British writer Adrian Hamilton observes that although Al-Salahi was influenced by Western art, it is the imagery rooted in his homeland that evokes the greatest admiration. He describes him as a visionary modernist and one of the pioneers of African artistic renaissance, noting the recurrence of earthly tones and mask-like faces in his work, features he identifies as distinctly African. Influence of Sufism on his works. Al-Salahi is not merely an artist who borrows Sufism as symbolic ornamentation. Rather, in the fullest sense of the term, he is a product of that environment, shaped by its questions, embodying its existential anxieties and carrying forward its intellectual and spiritual legacy. According to an article in the academic journal African Art, Al-Salahi holds a strong faith in Islam and he is a Sufi. He prays 5 times a day, and also before he works on his artwork. Like other Sufis, Al-Salahi views prayer as a way to establish a connection between the Creator and the created. His Sufism is not merely a surface upon which he draws lines. It is itself among the subjects rendered within that liminal space between art and spirit. It manifests as a model of being, an existential condition revealed across his artistic expressions. In Arabic calligraphy, in silence, in color, in the tranquil meeting of the two Niles, and equally in states of austerity, hardship, fracture, and the unending search for meaning. What the Sufi person strives for and often achieves is thus a unity of mind and purpose. For everyone who has lived in Sudan, where Sufism is so dominant in public and private life, these works of Ibrahim Al-Salahi appear indeed as figural figural translations of the Sufi experience. Salahi spoke about the impact of Sufism in his artistic journey and in the Sufism touch, which has appeared in several of his work. To quote him, "From ancient artistically, Sufism is deep-rooted, and it is one of the most factors that influence my artistic works. From the very beginning, his students recognized his true worth. To them, he was not only a teacher, but a spiritual father, one who opened the doors of visual art and unveiled its deeper mysteries, not a mere technique, but the path to knowledge. He taught them the Sufism of art, a form not found in curricula nor grasped by the hurried eye, but one intimately known in Omdurman and felt by Sudanese people in the rhythms of life, between line and remembrance, silence and meaning, the Nile and the desert, the Khalwa and the Masjid." Addressing the Sufi dimension of Al-Salahi's art, Sudanese artist Hussein Jam'an remarks that his works invite interpretation through suggestion, persuasion, and contemplation. They operate within philosophical and meditative frameworks, shaped by emotional depths, yet controlled with remarkable mastery, sincerity, and refinement and embellishments. Al-Salahi is considered a pioneer in Sudanese modern art and was a member of the Khartoum School of Art, founded by Usman Wagi Allah, Ahmed Muhammad Shibrin, Taj Sir Ahmed, and Salhi himself. Other members of this artistic movement in Sudan were poets, novelists, and literary critics of the Desert School that also sought to establish a new Sudanese cultural identity. One of the main areas of focus for Khartoum School was to create a modern Sudanese aesthetic style and not relying only on Western influences. In the 1960s, he was briefly associated with the Mabari Club in Abadan, Nigeria. In an interview with Sarah Diwida, a curator at the Guggenheim Abu Dhabi, Al-Salahi commented about his time spent in Nigeria and the impact it had on his work. "My short visit to Nigeria in the early 1960s gave me the chance to connect artistically with the dynamic part of the African continent, opening myself to influence and to be influenced." He began by exploring Coptic manuscripts, which led him to experiment with Arabic calligraphy. Ultimately, he developed his own style and was among the group of artists to elaborate Arabic calligraphy in his modernist paintings in a style that became known as Al-Hurufiyya art movement. In an interview with The Guardian in 2012, Al-Salahi explained how he came to use calligraphy in his artworks. Following his return to Sudan in 1957, he was disappointed at the poor attendance at his exhibitions and reflected on how to generate public interest. "I organized an exhibition," just to quote him, "I organized an exhibition in Khartoum of still lives, portraits, and youths. People came to the opening just for the soft drinks. After that, no one came. It was as though it hadn't happened. I was completely stuck for 2 years. I kept asking myself why people couldn't accept and enjoy what I had done. After reflecting on what would allow his work to resonate with people, I started to write small," he said, "I started to write small Arabic inscriptions in the corners of my paintings, almost like postage stamps, and people started to come towards me. I spread the words over the canvas and they came a bit closer. Then I began to break down the letters to find what gave them meaning. And Abanadora's box opened animal forms, human forms, and plant forms began to emerge from these once abstract symbols. That was when I really started working. Images just came, as though I was doing it with a spirit I didn't know I had. Even at more than 90 years of age, Al-Salahi continued his artistic production. As a new form of expression, he created tree-like sculptures for Regent's Park in London, which are modeled on the Haraz trees of his homeland. Recognition and major expositions. Al-Salahi's works have been shown in numerous expositions and are represented in collections such as Tate Modern, the Museum of Modern Art, and the Sharqa Art Foundation. In 2001, he was honored with a Prince Claus Award from the Netherlands. In the summer of 2013, a major retrospective exhibition of 100 works was presented at the Tate Modern Gallery, London. The Tate's first retrospective dedicated to an African artist. From November 2016 to January 2017, Al-Salahi's work was featured prominently in the first comprehensive exposition dedicated to the modernist art movement in Sudan, entitled The Khartoum School, The Making of the Modern Art Movement in Sudan, 1945 present day, as the Sharqa Art Foundation in the United Arab Emirates. In 2018, the Asham Lane Museum in his adopted home in Oxford, United Kingdom, presented a solo exposition of Al-Salahi's work. This exposition allowed the viewers to appreciate early works as well as some of his more recent works. This exposition also combined his works with ancient Sudanese objects from the museum main collection as examples of traditional artworks. One of the key aspects of this exposition was Al-Salahi's use of the Haraz tree. This tree is a native acacia, a species found commonly in the Nile Valley that symbolizes the Sudanese character for the artist. As scholar Salah Muhammad Hassan pointed out, the trees series has demonstrated not only Al-Salahi's work and productivity, it also reveals the artist's ability to reinvent himself while remaining on the forefront of exploration and creativity. The audience just we made this fast but short trip traveling with the renowned Sudanese artist Ibrahim Al-Salahi. So just I have presented part of his great legacy. I have presented this great legacy in these short minutes, and in fact his legacy is so magnificent, and he is considered a modern Sudanese artist, a founder of schools that still inspired new generations in the field of calligraphy, paintings. By this, the audience, before to wrap up here, just I would like to share the sources that I have consulted to present this episode. about our renowned Sudanese artist Ibrahim Al-Salahi. So Wikipedia, in which we have a thorough study to Ibrahim Al-Salahi, biography, works, exposition, and so on. Another source that is Laura Hopman and Hassan Musa, their works. The Drawing Center, Ibrahim Al-Salahi, Pain Relief Drawings, published in 2020. And then we have another source, that's fanac.com, features Insight Ibrahim Al-Salahi. And then we have Sam Bardwell and Tel Thalarth, their work, a look at 5 artist groups in 5 Arab cities across 5 decades. And then we have the Drawing Center, Ibrahim Al-Salahi, Pains Relief Drawings text by Laura Hopman and Hassan Musa, and they told had been published in 2020. And furthermore, I would like to tell that the impact of Sufism on arts in Sudan, published book, is another source that I have consulted. It has been published in 2024 by Abdul Jalil Abdullah Saleh. Another important source that also I have consulted is إبراهيم الصلاحي، صوفية الفن وإسقاء الذاكرة حين تتحول اللوحة إلى صلاة بلا كلمات. An article written by Dr. Muhammad Badawi Mustafa, and it has been published on 21st of January 2026 and available at madamake.com. By this, the audience, I came to the end of the episode. Till seeing you in another episode. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.